The WW2 battle that started before Pearl Harbor, nobody talks about it. The world remembers Pearl Harbor as the moment the Pacific War erupted, explosions, burning ships, a date that will live in infamy. But what if I told you the first Allied soldiers to fight Japan were nowhere near Hawaii? What if I told you the real opening shots of the Pacific War were fired hours earlier, on a lonely beach in British Malaya, by Indian soldiers almost forgotten by history? Today we're diving into the night the war truly began, the Battle of Kota Bharu, a battle that happened before Pearl Harbor and yet barely appears in the storybooks. And when you understand what happened on that beach, you'll see why this moment deserves to shake the world just as much. It is the night of December 7, 1941, but not the infamous night Americans remember. On the other side of the planet, the South China Sea is dark and strangely calm. British scouts on the coast feel something is wrong. The wind is too quiet, the waves too clean, the horizon too empty. Unknown to them, the darkness is hiding a Japanese invasion fleet, transport ships, landing craft, bombers, all moving in silence. Their objective is simple: capture Kota Bharu, seize airfields, and secure the first Japanese foothold in Southeast Asia before sunrise. Their timing is perfect, their plan is clinical, their commanders expect a fast victory. After all, who would resist them? But waiting on those beaches are battalions of the British Indian Army, the 317th Douglas, the 212th Frontier Force, and the Rajputana Rifles. Men from Punjab and the northwest frontier, trained, disciplined, and standing in the most unforgiving terrain imaginable. At exactly 12:25 a.m., silence dies. Searchlights tear open the sea. Machine guns begin roaring, mortars pound the shoreline. The Indian soldiers unleash everything they have. The first Japanese landing craft explode before even touching the sand. Bodies fall into the water as the waves turn black with oil and smoke. These, right here, are the very first Allied shots of the Pacific War, not fired in Hawaii, not fired by Americans. Fired by Indian soldiers who have almost been erased from global memory. That alone should change how we talk about World War II. But the Japanese keep coming. Their landing craft push through heavy tides, their soldiers jump into the surf, and chaos erupts into brutal close-quarters combat. When ammunition runs low, the Douglas fix bayonets and charge into the waves. Men wrestle, stab, choke, and fight in knee-high water illuminated only by burning boats. It is savage, exhausting, and far more desperate than anything the Japanese planned for. Strong currents pull their landing craft off course, barbed wire traps entire units, machine guns carve through their first waves, hundreds drown, hundreds are gunned down, hundreds more collapse in the sand. And yet they push, step by step, meter by meter, bleeding for every few feet of beach. Just when the line looks like it might snap, the 212th Frontier 4th Regiment joins the fight. Hardened warriors, fearless under pressure, they counterattack with astonishing force. And for a moment, the impossible becomes real. The Indian troops begin pushing the Japanese back toward the sea. The invasion, one of Japan's most critical first-day operations, is almost collapsing on the shore. In another reality, those beaches might have become Japan's first major failure of the war. Then, at first light, the sky turns into a weapon. Japanese bombers arrive in formation and rain destruction across the coastline. Trench lines vanish in fire. Communication posts disappear in dust. Reinforcements are pinned down instantly. The Indian defenders, brave but exposed, take heavy losses. This battle turns from a contest of courage to a demonstration of air supremacy. Japan's aircraft, not its infantry, decide the outcome. By sunrise, the defenders know they're outmatched, but they don't break, they don't run, they fight until ordered to withdraw. By noon, the British command makes the painful decision to pull back, not surrender, withdraw. A tactical retreat executed under pressure most armies would crumble under. The Indian soldiers fall back in discipline, still trading fire, still refusing to collapse into chaos. These were not colonial troops as often dismissed in Western narratives. These were some of the toughest, most resilient fighters in the entire Allied lineup, volunteers, not conscripts, men who traveled thousands of miles to defend lands not even their own. Japan takes the beach by midday, and later the airfield, but their victory is not clean. Their casualties at Kota Bharu are higher than in any other landing operation of their early war push. Boat crews are shaken. Infantry units lose a frightening number of men. Officers write reports that read like horror stories. Japan wins the beach, but they pay dearly, and they learn quickly that the British Indian Army will not be an easy opponent. So why has this battle been forgotten? The answer is simple. Pearl Harbor stole the world's attention. The burning ships, the dramatic explosions, the American narrative, it swallowed everything around it. Kota Bharu, a remote beach with Indian soldiers far from home, vanished from the headlines. Even in documentaries and history books, its name barely shows up. Yet the truth remains unshakable. The Pacific War began not with explosions in Hawaii, but with gunfire in Malaya. Fired by Indian soldiers standing in the dark. Their story matters, their courage matters. They delayed Japan's timetable. They exposed weaknesses in Japan's amphibious assaults. They proved that Allied forces could resist the Japanese Empire even in the worst circumstances. They fought until their trenches were craters, their guns were empty, and their orders forced them back. And they did all this without recognition, without global applause, and without the privilege of being remembered. Today, by telling their story, we are restoring something stolen, a piece of truth, a piece of honor, a piece of the war that deserves to be seen. The men of Kota Bharu did not fight for glory. They fought because duty called. They fought knowing they were outnumbered. They fought knowing they faced one of the most aggressive imperial forces in history, but they stood their ground, and in doing so, they marked the true beginning of the Pacific War. Remember their courage, say their names, and never forget. Before Pearl Harbor burned, Kota Bharu bled. Found it interesting? Subscribe and share to inform others.